Next, from Springfield, we talked to two mothers, and later Senators Connelly and Thomas Cullerton, about an illness associated with strep throat that is going misdiagnosed and leading to further health complications among children. This runs about 15 minutes.
Ladies, thanks for joining us. And you are both mothers of children who have been impacted by disease I think most of us have never heard of. And I wanted to get your stories about what happened to your child and then how you happened to be, which you probably didn't expect to be, standing here in the state capitol lobbying for legislation.
Right.
Kate, what is your story?
My son, on his 8th birthday, he was completely normally happy functioning before. On his 8th birthday, he woke up with strep throat. He then woke up a completely different child. He could no longer function. He developed extreme OCD. He became anorexic because he was scared of food. He was scared of water, so he wouldn't bathe for 2 months. He had motor tics so bad that we thought he was having seizures. We begged our doctors for answers. We had no idea what it was. They were telling us that we needed to put him into an institution, that we may never get him back again. He screamed in pain from the minute he woke up to the minute he went to sleep. And my 2 younger kids I couldn't even take care of them. They were taking care of themselves because I was with him constantly. Finally, after 2 months of him going through this pain and us not knowing what it is and almost having to give up and put him in an institution, we found a doctor that said, I think he has PANDAS. Let's get his blood work. We did the blood work. He had strep titers 6 times higher than normal reference range. He needed high-dose antibiotics. He started coming back to us. He started to eat again. He started to be able to read again and started to be able to leave the house. His brain was so inflamed, though, because what had happened is he got the strep throat, so his own antibodies, instead of attacking the strep, attacked the back of his brain, which was causing all of these motor and emotional functions to decline. So we went ahead. We found one of the top doctors in the United States right in Hinsdale, Illinois. We decided to go ahead with IVIG, which is fresh blood antibodies from other donors, to reset his immune system. We couldn't afford it. It was $12,000 for one treatment. Our family, I have a big family, they decided to do a fundraiser. They raised the funds. My son had the treatment.
And let me interject. You had to be paying for it yourself because it wasn't covered by insurance. Is
Correct.
That right?
It was the recommended treatment to cure him, and it wasn't covered by insurance. We went ahead with it because we knew it would give our son his life back. So we raised the money, we did the treatment. 6 months later, after my son had missed almost all of 2nd grade, he was 100% back in 3rd grade, football star. Now he's in 6th grade, football star, basketball star, straight A's, honor roll student, not a symptom again. So. And
when he had strep throat, how quickly did his symptoms of the panda disease manifest itself?
It was almost within a day or so. The strep throat first came on. We did low-dose antibiotics to treat the strep, but the antibodies were already attacking his brain. It was he was too weak to fight it, so we didn't pair the 2 and 2 together until 2 months later when a doctor brought it up again.
And what happened to your child?
I actually have 3 children who have PANDAS, so it's a little bit more complicated to tell that whole story. But similar things happened in my family. So, literally overnight, my one child stopped eating. And every food, every smell of the food would completely turn him off. He had increased urinary frequency, bedwetting, and had to touch certain things in a certain way. And having been a social worker in a special education field in the past, I recognized immediately that something was very wrong. However, when I brought him to the pediatrician, at that time, there wasn't enough awareness. They didn't understand. And even when I said, I think this might be as a result of the strep throat he recently had, they refused to swab him for strep throat, which is a very easy procedure. So we went for about 6 months, and then eventually I got them to swab for strep throat, and he turned up positive immediately. And then I knew what we needed to do because I had been doing research.
you were just looking for on your own, just stuff that, looking for, here's the symptoms, and you found, what, online, that there was a disease called PANDAS?
Right, right.
When you said you had 3 children, they were all impacted by this, which is shocking to hear. Did you then, on the second and third time, know what you were dealing with?
I was much quicker on the uptake, yeah.
When you had the treatments, did you also have, I mean, the costly fact, and did your children all respond in kind? Does it leave? Is there a legacy from the disease, or did they hopefully cover entirely?
My kids responded very quickly to the IVIG, and now are doing fantastically. I've got one in college, one going to college, and one who's going to be a senior in high school. And but we did empty a college fund in order for them to be able to be treated.
And so you are here with some other mothers who are similar stories, and you went to Senator Cullerton and explained it, and now the bill that would mandate insurance coverage has passed the House. It will be going to the Senate shortly. How much, do you know how much would that cover the vast majority of the cost of treating the disease?
We believe so. Oh, yeah. Yes.
And the other thing I would guess is, I think you would argue, as far as some people might say, well, what's this a cost to raising the cost of all the rest of us? But I think you would say, look, you were taking your children to doctors for one thing after another, and in talking to some of the other mothers, when it was misdiagnosed, it's not like the cost of this treatment versus nothing, it's the cost of all the other things that are being done that were ineffective, right?
It is far more costly to ignore treating PANDAS than it is to just treat it correctly in the first place, because these kids are going to drain on the state for a lifetime if we don't just treat them appropriately.
If my son had been put into an institution, it could have been lifelong, versus now he's got his childhood back, and we're not on antibiotics, we're not, he's back, and we're not costing the state any money.
Well, when you were saying about how the pain your son was in and just screaming like that for 2 months, I can just imagine the hell that would put you through as a parent.
Yep.
It's really scary. These children's brains are inflamed, and that has to hurt. Yeah.
Is it I know you're not a doctor, but does it just impact the lining of the brain, do you know, or?
No, it affects the basal ganglia, which controls movement and emotion. So, it is an autoimmune encephalotide, a type of brain swelling. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that we treat these kids as quickly as we can.
And that's right. Well, let's close out this. It's good that you're not only getting legislation perhaps passed here as we stand, but that you're also raising awareness. What would you say to anyone whose child gets strep, as almost everyone will, that they just ought to be aware that this could be a follow-up disease, right? And what advice, and where can they go for more information if they want it?
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to scare everyone out there, because strep is a very common childhood illness. But if you see behavior changes after a strep infection, there are people that you can call for help. I mean, we run a support group for families in Illinois, and you can find us at www.pas.care or on Facebook. And we try to stay up ahead of the research almost, and give them the information that they need, find doctors for them, and even provide grants for families who are in search of medical care and can't get it covered by insurance. So.
And I think one of the mothers said that their doctors, in fact, it might have been you, but some of the doctors don't even believe this exists as a disease. So if you run into a doctor who doesn't accept that this is a proper diagnosis, then you might have to know that there are other doctors out there that are aware of it.
There are definitely other doctors here in Illinois who treat PANDAS appropriately, and so I would recommend to those families that they find our support group and get in contact with the 600 plus members that we have who've been working really, really hard to get their children well.
Is that just in Illinois, the 600, or is that nationwide?
It is just in Illinois. It's our local support group, so Illinois and the surrounding states, because they include members who come into Illinois to see the doctors here.
Senators, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. And we wanted to hear about a rather rare disease that I had personally never heard about. And I think from talking to some of the mothers, they've had problem having this diagnosed. They came to you, and now we're working on some legislation that might address some of the problems they've had having their children treated for this. Let's just start, Senator Cullerton, if I would, with you.
So this was brought to me probably about 4 years ago, and we started off initially with creating a task force. It's called PANDAS, which confuses some people at times. They think it's talking about a bear, but it's actually pediatric autoimmune neurological disorder associated with strep. So children can catch this disease, and then doctors aren't really on board yet entirely and haven't been really made aware to start diagnosing for it. And it's really, every child is susceptible to strep. And it turns children just upside down entirely. There's tics, there is disorders that could go along with the sense of autism and everything else. So we found out that insurance companies weren't even looking at it, they weren't talking about it, they weren't providing for it. So this bill will start to address that. And a lot of that is the work from the advocates of the mothers who brought it to me back 4 years ago, and through the task force we set up initially. And part of the biggest thing is to raise awareness.
And Senator Connelly, what would this bill? It's HB 2721. What would this do legislatively?
Well, first of all, the disease. My wife and I have 3 children now in their 20s, and I don't know of a parent who hasn't had a child who had strep throat. And the notion that strep throat it manifests itself not in I've got a scratchy throat, I've got a fever, but it looks psychological, so it gets misdiagnosed. What the bill will do is essentially provide a treatment for these children to the point where they get back to square one. By and large, when these parents came to me, the parent in me said, my goodness, all of our kids had strep throat almost on a routine basis, and if we treat it at the outset, it's simply strep throat that goes away. But it's something that Senator Cullerton's done a terrific job of bringing awareness to this, and this bill will provide the coverage and the medical care they need to help their children overcome this and move on to a productive life.
Am I right that currently what this would do, would it mandate coverage, that insurance companies cover this?
It would have insurance companies cover this. And truthfully, when you talk, the study out of Massachusetts, it's 0.003 cents onto a policy. But the fact is if a child gets misdiagnosed and ends up getting symptoms of Tourette's and they make it a psychological disorder, we're talking about a child that's going to be in the system and cost people for the rest of that child's life. If this doesn't get caught and go away, the child will not go back to a productive life. The child will not go back towards a receptive, growing individual within the state and who can be a taxpayer, but they'll be somebody who's reliant on state dollars for the rest of their life.
Are the insurance companies still opposing this? Or?
So in the House, there was an initial opposition. They filed an amendment, and we got pretty much everybody off. It passed in the House 114-0. We have great bipartisan support here in the Senate so far. I believe we're close to 22 sponsors and getting more every day. We have a great group of moms down here who've been advocating for this. The board of the group has been down talking to legislators all day, as well as talking to people in their districts. So I think we're going to be in great shape when we bring it up next week in committee.
And has anyone talked to the governor about it? Do we know where they stand?
I don't know. I know that the insurance industry has talked about just a small tweak here and there, but as Tom said, I think there's wide bipartisan support on this, and we're hopeful. 114-0 is somewhat telling in the House, and certainly we'd like to replicate something like that in the Senate. And when it gets to the second floor, I know I would advocate for signature.
When would it become effective, the bill?
I believe it would be on January 1, but I'd have to verify on the bill. So don't quote me, even though I'm now on tape saying it. But
well, with all the coverage we often do of nothing getting done at the Capitol, it's good to have something that's actually moving.
Well, thank you. It's and it's a great effort on from both parties, and truly, it's something that helps our children. And if we can't come down here and do that, then why else would we come down?
All right, Senator Cullerton and Senator Connelly, thanks for joining.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.